Architectural Review Board of April 12th at 6:00 p.m. And you welcome all the usual participants. Unfortunately, I guess Kathleen is no longer one of our members, but hopefully we'll get a new one eventually. There are minutes to be dealt with. If you'd like to put that off until after we talk to CT, we can postpone that.
Does anyone have any comments on them that would need to be postponed?
There were just a couple of run together words that I noticed and made note of with a highlighter. I can send that back in, but if they go through and just check out, make sure that the words are not running together. I think, I mean, the actual information that is included is fine, as far as I could see. Anybody have any other comments about it?
No.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes.
A second. That should be good.
Okay, so
CT,
why don't you go ahead, CT?
Yeah. Right.
Good evening, all. Jim, if you, I guess, put up the revised site plan.
Certainly.
Thank you. So what we have here is our revised site plan after meeting with you guys. I know the Historical Commission had a review, and we were in front of the couple of the boards and got input from them as well. So we went back and looked at some of the suggestions and revised the site plan to this. As you can see, we reduced the number of buildings. Our last presentation, we had the old stone building, the Quill House. We had a 6-unit building, a 4-unit building, and another 4-unit building with a total of 17 residential units. We deleted one of the 4-unit buildings and added an addition to the Quill House. That reduced the number to 14 units. So that added quite a bit of green space, as you can see, and we have an area marked community area for grilling and things like that. We all,
Renderings are horrible of the old house.
Someone's whispering in the background. They might want to not do that.
So also, you can see we kind of staggered the buildings a little bit. We added covered porches to the front, which was another recommendation that people had. In reducing the number of units by deleting the building, we were able to fit the required parking on the site. So we no longer need to request off-site parking. We looked at moving the parking lot parallel to either Yardley Langhorne or Edgewood Road, and it just gave the feel of more of a strip mall type of deal, where here, though you're looking at the parking lot, you're looking at it long ways instead of wide ways. Some things we did not change is we're still asking to not have sidewalks on Yardley Langhorne, and that's specifically to just reduce our interaction with PennDOT, as Yardley Langhorne Yardley Road is a PennDOT road. We are proposing sidewalks over on Edgewood Road. And another change is we're asking to remove the Quill House and reconstruct it the same size and shape, and perhaps stripping the siding off of it and reusing it on the new structure, and adding an addition, a 1-unit addition on it. The more we look at the house, the more it just doesn't seem feasible. By the time we redid it, and the foundation doesn't look so good as well. We have the engineer's report, and I know we've been back and forth, so we are proposing that again. We did do some renderings so you can get an idea of the scale. That was another concern, that the new buildings conform or fit in with the existing buildings. So I don't know if you want to run through them, Jim, and I'll just tell you the view that we're looking at.
Yeah, let me see if I can get that working.
And this looks like when I do FaceTime with my parents.
Yeah, for some reason, it's not letting me go full. Oh, there we go.
You're good. I'm just teasing.
I hit
You beat me
Control
to
L
it,
4
Dan.
times and it didn't work. The 5th time.
I was silently laughing to myself.
Yeah, I'm old.
So the first one, this view is looking across Yardley Langhorne Road with the old stone house on the right, the 6-unit building in the middle, and then the 4-unit building on the left. Parking would be behind the 4-unit building. So you're down a little bit on the side of the street with a skateboard shop.
I like the renderings that you've done.
I'm sorry?
I said I like the renderings that you've done.
Thank you. This is, again, looking up Yardley Langhorne Road, closer down to towards the CVS. Looking back, again, on the far right, you can see the old stone building, then the 6-unit, and now your closer view of the 4-unit.
CT, I have one question for you. Did
Yes.
you get that? Did you get the email that I had sent with some of the feedback with the board members about the stoops on the fronts of the building?
No, I don't believe that I did. So
Okay, I'm
I'm
sorry.
assuming if I could guess, I guess you're going to say you want some stoops on the front.
Yes,
Yes.
I had sent the renderings out to the members so they could look at it earlier, and that was one of the comments I got back was that about having stoops on the front of the building. I thought I sent that to you. I might have sent it to the wrong address. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. And yes, that's certainly doable. That's not a problem at all.
And Mike or Jim, from a stoop perspective, whenever I see a door at grade, entrance at grade, I always worry about water intrusion. Is there anything in our code that requires a specific type of stoop instead of a door being at grade or having a ramp or something like that, just in case?
That might
building
have something,
I'm sorry.
excuse me, that might have something to do with the rendering. Most of these are starting out at a building plane, and aside from making adjustments in the rendering process of the computer to actually put a raised basement underneath it to some extent, this is what you end up getting. I suspect that there has to be something of a differentiation, and I would imagine that's one of the things that the porches would do if we went to the process of going through and putting stoops on, similar to the one on the corner that has a raised porch that's, only 16, 18 inches above grade, but it makes a big difference in terms of its relationship to the street. So I think that since most of us have had a chance to look at the renderings, and your explanation so far is very clear, and what you are looking to do in terms of parking and on-site amenities and things like that, a lot of that has to do with the zoning code and the TND, and I think we might want to deal with that as part of the later discussion, but I'd like to start out with at least trying to set the parameters of our discussion for today, because this is the Historical Architectural Review Board. We're supposed to be looking at the buildings, and even though a lot has to do with the relationship to one another, this is still something that is expressed in the facades and the massing of the buildings. And I think there's plenty of information to explore and evaluate and discuss during the next 10, 15 minutes. But I think unless there's a greater need, Jim or Dan, we could conceivably push along with those topics to begin with, because as you mentioned, you already got some feedback, correct, Jim?
And what I wanted to say, well, first I'll answer Dan's question that, yes, there are certain parameters. You can have a building right at the grade. It probably would have to have at least one step down just for termite
It has to have a
controls. I guess I
landing.
have a question for CT as to whether or not these places will have basements or will they be slab on grade?
I think we're planning on basements. We would plan on basements.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
and actually, if
but there will need to be
I can actually, can I answer Dan's question real quick?
Go.
It's actually required by the building code to have a landing outside of an egress door.
Thanks, Mike and Jim.
You're welcome.
And also, just to help out, I don't think CT mentioned, this view is from a little further up Langhorne Yardley Road towards the CVS, looking back towards the intersection of Edgewood Road. So the existing Ishmael house is the third building on the right that you see in this photograph. And then we can go through the other renderings. And to Mr. Hines' point, yes, the primary purpose of HARB is to look at the buildings and their relation to each other and the surrounding area. So that's why the porches and the general look and feel of the buildings are important. But we can go through the other slides and we could backtrack. How does that sound?
You've got them queued up. Let's go ahead. Thank you, Jim.
So that is looking from the neighbor's property into the development. On the left is the framed house. On the right is the 4-unit, and then kind of in the middle would be the 6-unit. So,
So that's, is that right from the doc? I forget the doctor's name, but his property, their property line there?
yes.
Okay, so there's,
So on the right would be Yardley Langhorne Road. On the left is Edgewood, and they're meeting behind those buildings.
is he, not to get off topic, but is Dr. Chimino, if I remember correctly, has he seen these at all? Or he and his wife?
I think Jim might have forwarded. We have not met with him yet. We
Okay.
do plan to talk to him about it and go over it with him, but we haven't had a chance yet.
They were forwarded to Dr. Semino.
So this is actually standing in Edgewood Road over by the entrance to, or I guess it's the entrance to Di Lorenzo's, but this is from Edgewood Road. On the right is the framed house. The middle one would be the 6-unit, and then the left is the stone house on the point. And kind of peeking through is the 4-unit.
CT, that the house that's on the right in this rendering, that's the Quill house, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that was modeled in the parameters of the existing structure and existing envelope?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Same with the stone house on the corner. There's some added windows and treatments to it, but that is to scale with the other houses to what is there.
Were the windows added on this side, or is that on another view?
Well, I think on the 2 wings of the stone house, I think there's just single windows there. So there's double windows added.
Okay.
And the porch is extended out a little bit.
All right. All right. Any more pictures, Jim?
Yep. So this is looking still on Edgewood. On the right is the reconstructed Quill house, and it's the 6-unit, and then you can just see the edge of the stone house on the point. So this is kind of over by the stop sign, looking back towards the houses.
So where you're standing, the stop sign would be to your left at
Correct.
the previous picture. Okay.
Yep. And I think this is back to this is on Yardley Langhorne up by closer to the skateboard shop, looking across Yardley Langhorne. To the right would be the kind of behind where all the pictures is the stone house, and then that's the 6-unit, and then the 4-unit. And then to the very left, you can just kind of see a hint of the top of the parking lot.
Does anyone have any questions on any of the renderings that they'd like to dig into?
This is Jennifer. I have a quick one. Did your architect talk to you about how he's venting the furnace? Are you planning on maybe putting chimneys on these structures?
We did not talk about it, but it's obviously something that can certainly be added.
Okay, I'd like to ask if we can start by dealing with the massing of the houses. If there's any other way you'd like to go, certainly the members can speak up, but I think that actually, the way that they're put together, the houses have this facade that presents a pretty much planar face at the road edge, even though there's a little bit of an offset. That kind of thing, I believe, would be handled with a porch where one side would be set back, and that would really help that kind of thing. So I think that porch question becomes really important. So since it's already gotten feedback on that, why don't we open the discussion about the porches and what's required by the TND. Anybody? I'm sorry, maybe I'm jumping the gun.
I agree, and being they're probably going to put basements in them, so they'll be raised up a little bit, which lends them to porches on the front, which would definitely change the definition of the front of the building.
So, Steve, in terms of, we were talking about the landing, and ultimately if you have a landing and a cover that it forms by nature a small porch, right? Kind of like what you see on the right side here.
Yeah, those little pent roofs over the doors are really kind of shields for rain infiltration, and, someone there. But the idea of a porch similar to the one that's shown on the right-hand side of the picture that's currently up, that's part of the corner house, it has a different use in most cases. The place to put some plants or a chair, and depending on the view and depending on the speed of the traffic, it could be one of those things that's an amenity. But it certainly has an effect on how the house presents itself to the street, as you can tell with a number of the houses that continue on the right-hand side along Yardley Langhorne Road. And the porch that was taken off of the corner store, the Tomlinson store, yes.
Yeah. I grew up hanging out on a porch, Stephen. I love porches. It's a certain something, right? I'm just wondering, from a T&D perspective, what is for the requirement of a porch? And I have the sun glare coming over my computer. That's why I don't have my video on right now, so you don't see me squinting. From a definition of a porch within the T&D, what would he have to, in your opinion, what would he have to do differently to incorporate something that meets the requirements of a porch? Doesn't have to be a wraparound porch or anything like that. Doesn't, the one on the right there is fairly small. So what are you thinking? I guess where I'm going.
I guess about 6 months ago, or maybe even a year ago now, I did a napkin sketch of the idea that the front face of a double house, a twin house with a party wall down the center, would be offset enough so that you could have a small porch on one side. The other side could actually be planar. And instead of having a shed roof that comes down toward the street and has some dormers in it that, in this case, to me, is a little bit odd because they're so deep. One side could be a gable end facing the street, where the other one would be set back with a porch, and that would create an idea that the house is really one big house and has a porch on one side, and the entrance to the other side could be in a different location, could be on the other side of the building entirely. So I'm hoping that the other members will talk a little bit more about what their ideas are. Certainly, I don't want to demand the entire time to talk about my ideas, but I'd be happy to send out that little napkin sketch and you have an idea of what I saw as a possibility.
Yes,
Luba, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just have a couple of points here. The one is from the parking lot. How do they access the main door, the main entrance to the apartments, the ones that are facing Yardley Langhorne, if there are no sidewalks? Do they have to walk in the grass?
No, they use the sidewalk from the parking lot to the actual rear of the units.
And there is an entrance in the rear.
Correct.
So this is sort of like a decoration entrance in the front.
Correct. The primary entrance would be from the back.
Okay. Yes, that would be my point. I'm not sure I know what's the requirements. You were mentioning something about PennDOT and sidewalks. Is that the issue of not having a sidewalk there?
It's just dealing with the organization of PennDOT is somewhat tedious. And if we could avoid that, we would like to.
Yeah, because going to the point that Steve raised about maybe having a porch, I can see that would be presenting a different look and, the shadow effect, light shadow as you drive on the street. But that almost really calls to have a sidewalk accessing the porch and the main entrance. I think the porch will be a feasible idea if you just push back the one unit that you're already setting a little bit back. I don't know how would that affect the rear portion of the buildings in terms of clearances with the other homes. But, that will give more interest and a little different look to the buildings themselves. So that's basically what I think possible.
And just for everyone's clarification, the ordinance we have specifies that 60% of the buildings need to have a porch, and the porch minimum size is 120 square feet. So that's a decent sized porch.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the
that's
other thing
good.
is it can't be enclosed.
Yeah.
Are there porches for those that you access from to Luba's point, Luba's question? I mean, the porches, not the porches, the doors that you access from the parking lot and not from the road. Do those have porches, or are they just more of a sort of a back door type of entrance?
They're supposed to be the main entrance. They have the covered area. And what I'm hearing is we need to have more porch. So we'd have to take a look at it. And I understand what Steve was saying about the larger offset and presenting one side with the porch, and then on the other side where the office head is different, then maybe putting the porch there. So perhaps some would have porches on the front side, or some would have it on the rear side.
I don't know if Jim, if you addressed this in an email earlier, but I'm really curious what this board thinks about just the scale of the buildings themselves compared to the rest of the district, just to see how y'all feel about how it fits in with the rest of the district, both size and heights and widths and just all those items, to see how everyone feels about that particular issue.
Jeff, do you have any input on any of this stuff? Since we haven't had from you.
To Dan's point, the only thing that I see that was really constructed in the village comparable is Di Lorenzo's. Nothing else has been constructed in there. These are a little bit bigger than the existing homes, like the skate shop and stuff like that, in my opinion. I do like the idea of the bigger setbacks with the porches, and I'd like to see sidewalks on the Yardley Langhorne Road side as well. I don't understand why we can't. I understand what Cam is saying about PennDOT, but you're not opening roads and stuff like that, so I don't know how much involvement would be with PennDOT. But I feel that the need for sidewalks is there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also the possibility of having a porch maybe just on the one unit and the next one doesn't have to have the porch.
Well, the way Dan said it, if you offset the buildings a little more than what they have them drawn, and you have a porch on one side, let's say the left side of the building has it on the front and the right side of the building has it on the back, on the different offsets. So it still would have porches on all the units, but some would be in the front, some would be in the back.
Yeah, there's also the aspect of the sidewalk creating something of a slowdown condition for people riding through the village, which was, I believe, one of the reasons behind actually requiring sidewalks and porches, is to make the relationship of the houses closer to the street, or all the other properties, including the ones that are commercial, to have them act as a way to slow down the traffic and create more of a walking village. So that's another consideration that we really like the developer to keep in mind, that these aren't just demands in order to make things look similar to historic structures, but ways to accomplish the end, which has always been to create a walking district.
And to your point, Stephen, one of the things I think of is, and CT, I think this is you as well. So when the flowers, fields, apartments, and everything else go in, the restaurant and all that, I can see those folks wanting to use a sidewalk on that side of the road in front here to get to CVS or the ATM or something like that. And that's it's almost a direct shot for them. And anyone that wants to cross from here to the skate shop or something like that, that just makes it, or cross from here to get to the sidewalk to walk up to the new restaurant that you're putting in, that should be a big draw. So I just see the sidewalk as being integral to integrating this portion of the village to the other portion, the middle of the village to the portion that the other parts that you're doing at Flowers Field, and not for nothing, eventually up to the whole Prickett Preserve, because there's going to be walkways all the way up that way too. So it creates a nice network. I might be stepping outside of the hard purview here, but that's just something that I think about a lot with this particular area.
Well, I think it's very much part of architecture in this case, Dan. We were talking about massing and the relationship to the street. That's all part of how the system goes together, and the reason for asking for these things. And even if we go a little tighter in and look at the windows on the corner house, CTC, you said, or CT, I'm sorry, you said you wanted to add some windows, but I think those windows really have to be in the same scale as the original windows in the house, even though they might not meet current requirements for egress. There's certain ways to get around that by putting an operable window that's the whole opening, even though they look like double hung windows. And those kind of things then will keep the existing historic structure to be closer to the fact. And if there are new ones, then I guess we can deal with finding a way to accommodate the egress capacity for bedrooms in a different manner. So all that historic stuff is integrated with the architectural look as well. So Dan, you're not getting any far afield. This is really what we're hoping to deal with here.
And not for poor CT, man. I'm the supervisor liaison to HARB, the Historic Commission, so I'll hear you tomorrow night too, and the Planning Commission. So when you get to the Planning Commission, you're going to have to hear the same stuff from me. So just tell me when to say it, but I'll probably be saying the same thing every time. But
So Steve, just so you know, I made a note of that about the window size in that building.
Yeah, I think you'll find also that especially since it's residential, that the building code, and Mike, you might back me up on this or tell me I'm wrong, is that there's in the historic structures, there's certain, let's say, grandfathered conditions that will allow for the smaller window sides. If we put in new ones, obviously we'll have to increase the opening to do that. But I think there's ways to get around it in a way that'll appear from the street to be historically correct. And that's one of the things we'll be looking for down the road when these come in as individual buildings. The one last thing I'd like to add is the 6-unit building is rather massive, and I would hope that you can maybe, even if you have to take some of that 30-foot opening and figuring out a way to put a single wide building in that's one apartment above another, and would reduce the massing of it and start to allow for the roofs to be a little more similar to in pitch to the ones that are already there. I think the one on the Quill House that you have drawn is pretty close, but it might be just a little bit flatter than is actually been built. And so it would be really nice if the gable end for one side of these twins, if you want to call them twins, over and under on either side apartments, that the one side would have a gable end facing the street that has a steeper pitch, something like a 10-12 or 8-12 to make it in. Anything else from any of the other members?
I wanted to get Stephen. If I could ask you, I just want to make sure the approach of sort of I don't want to say tearing down, but bringing down the existing structure and then rebuilding it somewhere in a different part of the site is. I just want to make sure the board's, at least in theory, okay with that approach. Obviously, there's nuance there, but I just want to get. I'd like to hear some feedback on that, because that'll be a big deal to some. I'm assuming.
It would actually stay in it. I'm sorry, Stephen, I didn't mean to, but just we're proposing to reconstruct it where it is actually still.
So same footprint.
Same footprint, correct.
With an addition on the back is what you're doing.
On the side, yeah.
Okay.
I certainly am sure that you'll have some input on that tomorrow night, because Dr. Hines is here telling me, do not let them take down that house. But I think we've talked about that. You see that there's CT. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. The idea of those walls, and I believe that they're probably balloon framing, that there's kind of a continuity from the plate to the roof. If it were supported and shored up in a certain manner, that the addition that you put on be built maybe with a little more structure involved, that could have an armature that would reach out and hold up the front wall of the existing building and not really just take it down. I unfortunately recalling what happened across the street in what was the Chelly House, and the promise that when we issued the permit to demolish it, obviously a demolition permit to the zoning, we expected it to be reconstructed, because that's what they said they were going to do, and it was never done. And I'm a little concerned that, yeah, you can get it pretty close and you can reuse the siding, but what needs to be considered is the historic fabric. And if you recall what they did at the Scammell's Corner, when the old Scammell mansion, they took down everything except the one stone wall, and then they reconstructed the house around it, and it ended up being a major attribute of the site, and certainly visible from the main road on Afton Avenue. So those kind of things are doable. They're obviously going to be more expensive than just removing it and starting anew on a new deck, and then just applying finished materials to the outside and keeping the windows perhaps the same size. It's going to be one of those questions about can you really get the sense, the feel of the existing building? And if you could even just leave the front wall or the front and two wing walls on the sides to go back to the porch, and then from there go back and do whatever you have to do to make it structurally sound, is certainly an aspect you might want to deal with, and investigate.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And just to clear the air, that house that you're talking about that was taken down, I forget the name of it. Oh,
Scandal's Corner?
no. The one in the village that was taken down.
The Shelley house, yeah.
Yeah, that at that time, that was not us.
I understand.
I just don't want anyone to think that.
No. No, I'm just saying that, when you ask for something in writing and they say, sure, we agree to this, and then you get in the midst of trying to reconstruct it, you find out, wow, things aren't going to work that way. And of course, this way you had to get that entrance into the parking lot for your Di Lorenzo building. I'm glad you brought that up, Dan. It was one of the things on my list, and certainly one of the things on Helen's list. So there was one other thing that I, aside from trying to take apart the 6-unit building and make it into the 4-unit building and another 2-unit building, which I think might help the sense of being pieces of construction that fill the site, and with a pretty solid density, but in keeping your numbers together. But the fact that you take it out of the massiveness of that building might help.
Gotcha.
Okay, there was one other thing. I kind of mentioned this to Jim in an email, and I'm not sure there was enough time to actually do this, but in terms of massing, is it possible that when you and your architect make another presentation, hopefully it'll be another presentation, that you can look at the other buildings in the village and get pictures of them with a scaler on them, that you can put them adjacent to the new construction, so you get the elevation of both buildings side by side, and the width of the buildings as well, and deal with how they look from the street in comparison to other buildings that are in the historic district.
I can certainly look into it.
Thank you. Other input, Jeff, Jen, anything?
Yeah, couple of things, if I may. On those 2 homes, the 2 units that are facing Yardley Langhorne Road, one suggestion would be, so they don't look like the twin sisters, identical, like maybe have them slightly different, with different elements. Like the one, you have a couple of dormers, maybe the other one could have a single one or something like that. Give them a little bit differentiation. And the other point was really not architecture, but in terms of the parking lot, just in consideration to the owners that are adjacent to that. Just, I'm sure you will do that, but just as to make it a point to have some landscape screening with evergreens. That would be sort of, something tall and thin. But evergreen, so they permanently, the neighbors, they don't have to be looking at the parking lot.
I think there might even be some sort of requirement, Jim, would know better, but yes, there would be landscaping across
Yeah,
that.
okay. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Jim, what's the buffer width requirement between the two lots here? Is it 10 feet, something like that?
It's only 5 feet.
It's only 5.
Parking lots are required to have a buffer of shrubs and or a low fence so that, looks like that neighborhood, hedgerow type thing.
Yeah.
So that's what would be required here.
So to Lou's point, you'd probably get a single row of fairly tall
Yeah,
linear
solid
evergreens
green,
there.
evergreen.
Yeah,
Mhm.
a green fence kind of thing.
Right.
Native evergreens, by the way, CT.
You're muted, Steve. You're muted, Steve.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Any other comments from any of the members? Are there any participants on telephone or other
Yes,
input?
we have one public comment. I can bring Ernest into the room now.
Is that okay? Fine, please do.
Great, we have Ernest in the room with us now.
I'll make my comments tomorrow.
Ernest, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, welcome to our meeting. Could you please give us your name and address?
Hi,
For the
can you hear
record.
me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Ernest Semino. I'm the business owner at the adjacent property at 1666 Edgewood Road.
Thank you. Dr. Cimino, please tell us what you have to impart as part of this discussion.
So, I'm still concerned that the new rendition has a density of 18.4 units per acre, or specifically 14 units for this property. And I'm looking at the plan overall, and I don't know if this is the appropriate board or commission to comment, but I think the density is still unfavorable. And my suggestion would be to drop the unit density down to 15 for this 3/4 of an acre, which would mean 12 units, eliminating 2. And I would accomplish that by eliminating the addition on the Quill House. I would move the 6-unit building. I'd make sure that the building in the middle was the 4-unit building, which could then have a larger setback from Yardley Langhorne Road. And I would make the last building, the one that's closest to the CVS, the 6-unit building. With the reduction in units, you would have therefore less need for parking. And the building that's closest to the CVS could move with its 6 units now and bigger footprint. It could move further down the road, losing some of these parking spaces, making room for the footprint of the building. So as I look at the new rendition of the plan, I'm concerned about the density. I think that the building should have a sidewalk and functional front porches on Yardley Langhorne Road. I think that could be accomplished by reducing the units, eliminating a few of the parking spaces, which I think would be eliminating 4 of them, and moving the 6-unit building to the opposite corner of this plan and not in the middle of the plan.
Thank you, Doctor. I don't know if you were here for the discussion a few minutes ago about changing the massing, but even taking that one unit that's backed up against the double unit along Yardley Langhorne Road, and turning it 90 degrees and putting it down there close to the edge would help. If it means that the back addition on the Quill House would be dropped, that would help be able to fit that in. So certainly something for our developer to discuss with his architect. I think if you deal with the streetscape instead of just as a massing rendering, and do it as a line drawing, and take a look at how the massing goes together and what the presentation is from the street, I think you'll have a different way of looking at this, and then putting it up against the other massing of other buildings in the historic district. It'll probably help to clarify that as well. So Dr. Simeonov, it was really good of you to have that comment. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, and I don't know if it's appropriate for this meeting, but I see that the new plan has, certain variance requests to be forgiven for the front porches and the sidewalk on Yardley Langhorne Road. And, I think it's a slippery slope that if this property is in some ways overdeveloped and too dense, then it's a precedent for the next property owner, such as myself or whoever takes over my property, to, build and disregard some of the guidelines based on the precedent set in 2022.
Thank you. Any further comment from the members of the board?
There's no more public comment.
Okay, any further comment from the board? Dan, you have any final words?
Final words. Actually, since Dr. Semir is still on the phone, I don't know if you heard the full conversation, but I think what everyone on this board and other boards that have seen this have made pretty. I think CT would agree with this. We've all made statements regarding the need for sidewalks and interconnectedness and concerns about density issues and the porches. So I hope, I know this is obviously not our first rodeo or first go around with this site and different approaches and whatnot, but I think the developer, CT in this case, has been kept his ears open and has made efforts to come back with certain things. And I think the board is where they've held firm on multiple items. But I do appreciate everyone's efforts to kind of keep this ball rolling in the right direction. Your sports metaphor, keep moving the ball down the field, but make sure we don't. In a smart way. So I don't from the sounds of it, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer. And there are still concerns out there to address, but I think folks are, the dialogue is good. So I appreciate everyone's dialogue on this one. And I know the CT is going to be put through the ringer a little bit with different, he'll get more comments, constructive comments. And we'll probably have another round of this at some point where we look at the responses to those comments, and we probably do this again would be my guess, but I just hope everyone keeps, CT, if you can keep an open mind, see what you can do, would appreciate that. And with the board, we have our charters to do what we need to do, so I appreciate you guys doing that, and we'll keep doing it.
I would reiterate our appreciation. The entire board is happy, thrilled with your response, that you keep coming back and making movements in the direction that we've shown to you as our concerns. And I hope that you can take these back and adjust some of your thinking and some of the layouts so that we can use that. I think the overlay, as it was developed, was given as something of a what? Yes, as something to help the developer make it worthwhile. For him to actually go through the process and put the money into it, whereas it's still maintaining. So we've made some movements to give greater density. And if you're saying at this point, like, as Dr. Simina said, well, we want to go way beyond that density, why set up the framework to do the adjustments that we've made so far in order to help the process move along? So if some further adjustment in the density can make this work, I hope that you'll consider it. And it's, Ms. Trollo, it's certainly a pleasure because you come in with a good heart, and the way that you're approaching this seems to be a way that we are working together toward a goal. So unless you're looking for something more definitive and agreement or approval from this board, I think that we're just going on saying we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, I appreciate all of your input, and I've got my list here to look at.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.
So we're left with the final point on the agenda, which is a brief discussion, hopefully brief, of the report of the ad hoc committee. And if there's any initial comments, please, why don't you just sound off now, and we can kind of perhaps narrow down the discussion to a couple of points if we're going to give them any feedback, which should be something that is to the point.
I get Stephen or Jim, just for clarification, from a HARB regulatory perspective, is there anything in terms of the way HARB was set up that is specific to any of that area, or is this more of a HARB has a lot of experience dealing with these types of issues, facades, et cetera, where it's more of a advice, guidance, hey, do you think of this type of thing that isn't specific to what HARB's typical purview is, but they're just a really good group to provide input?
Well,
It's
Dan,
the second one. It's not in the purview of HARB to review anything outside the scope of Edgewood Village. However, as a courtesy to the HARB, since the fact they do have a lot of experience in this realm, I know Mr. Hines wanted to go ahead and see if they had any recommendations on the report and any comments on it. So as with all advisory committees, they're all advisory and they could give whatever advice they want. And this is something that if they have a few comments that they feel can add to the conversation, I'm sure the township and the Board of Supervisors would welcome them.
And I will not only reiterate that, but I'll amplify that. I think HARB's input on this, and not just tonight, but as we go through the process, will be well appreciated given the collective experience here. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that you're not obligated to vote on certain things or look at certain things. It's just we really want to pick your collective brains because you're that good, and we need your advice.
Well, thank you. That's very complimentary. The reason I did bring it up was because I was listening to the presentation before the Board of Supervisors of the ad hoc committee, and one of the things that was mentioned was that one of the recommendations be that there be under the oversight of the HARB in terms of any further developments going to happen, any adjustments to the existing buildings. It was obviously not something that was voted on or taken up as a directive, but it's something that we would probably want to talk among ourselves about how to do that. Similar to what has happened when we were given the kind of oversight on the shopping centers, which are not really part of the historic village, but we've been asked to review signage and things like that in the past. So I guess the question is, are there any specific items among the things that were covered? If hopefully everybody had a chance to kind of at least do a quick overview of the report. If you haven't, I mean, we could table this discussion and consider it in another time.
I was trying to look at the report, but I couldn't get it to open up.
Okay. It is, click on it and it does come up, and it's pretty well presented in terms of the website mechanics. Jen, did you have a chance to review it?
I didn't. No.
Oh, okay. Well, there's certainly some buildings that are in there that I think we've even looked at the actual AOI building and the porches that were, and I had a meeting with them about how to proceed with changes they wanted to make in that. And that was maybe 8-9 years ago. So, I mean, we've been called upon before, and perhaps because of its relationship to the village, we might want to take a look at recommendations from us about how we can help. Certainly with the Satterthwaite House and review of that and adjustments to how they're going to make alterations to that. And if I will entertain a motion to table this discussion until we all have a chance to review the document, and then we can have some 2 or 3 items that we could forward to the Board of Supervisors at that time, if you like.
Yeah, Stephen, before you do that, I just want to make sure that everyone on the board is aware of the presentation. The ad hoc property committee and what they were doing, but 2, the presentation that was made in addition to the report, just because that gives a very good feel, not only their scope, but also just kind of the general mindset about what they were looking at, how they were looking at it, and what they were tasked to do. So if folks aren't familiar with that, it might be worthwhile next meeting or something, taking some time to explain that a little more detail, or even this meeting at the end before we adjourn, so that people, when they go back and look at the report and the presentation, they get more of an intro to that, so they understand where it's coming from.
Well, I agree, Dan, that the presentation itself was very well done by the chairman, and I think if there is a video of that somewhere in our archives at the township,
yeah,
a YouTube video someplace.
Yeah, so you can go to the township website, and maybe I can, if anyone see if I can do it. Jim might even be able to pull it up faster than I can, but
Well, I can provide a link for everyone to the presentation and also provide them with the presentation. And if anyone needs a copy of the report written, I could print out a copy, although I hate printing out stuff. We should have at least one copy printed that you guys can borrow and take a look at. And I know, I think Jeff might have had a problem because the file is rather large. So sometimes if you don't have enough bandwidth, it sort of stops in the middle.
Yeah.
So I can address that with everyone.
And watching a video doesn't always, it's a little grainy. So if you have the original presentation, it's a little easier to read too.
I could probably open the report up at work and print it.
Okay. Well, I need to print out a copy for myself. So if you want to print it, great. I know I'll have a copy here if you don't get around to it. And anyone needs to borrow it can certainly borrow it.
Sounds good.
Links are great, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks for your help. So a motion to table.
Second that.
All right. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And unanimously carried. If we have a motion to adjourn, I'm sure that would be appropriate now. We've put an hour and a lot of good effort into discussion of our point development. And I think the comments were really well presented. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes. Oh, great. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Thank you again for tonight. Have a happy Easter for those who are doing that, or other Passover or other things. All the best for all your families, and let's keep in mind the Ukraine people who certainly have a difficult time, and prayers.